Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have Steve Hall on. Let's just say it's been 20 years. I've been following this guy. 20 years, 2015, it's 2025. What the heck? Back in the Snapchat days where there were no stories on Instagram and you used to watch people's stories on Snapchat and then people would just tell their lives and he'd be walking every single morning at the exact same time, walking to the gym, talking about his thoughts. It was the time when we were both just getting into this all and starting our businesses, and his is now like skyrocketed as the bodybuilding business. That is kind of what just gave me a thought into what I want you to introduce yourself and this podcast episode with. And bodybuilding, if you look at the people on stage, you look at the people prepping for it, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people that you admire, the people that you scroll on your feeds, there's this bodybuilding aspect to it. We go to toning, sculpting, Pilates. We need to burn calories. We need to train in a way that's going to burn a bunch of fat, where no training has the sole purpose of let's build as much muscle, as much strength, as much performance as possible. Yeah, there's other elements in the same concept of we're building something, we're improving something. And it's those people that you typically see on your feed that you want to look to. It's not what they weigh, it's not their pant size, and what you think you need to do to get to this amazing look that you want, even if it is losing fat, even if it is, I don't want that much muscle. It all comes down to bodybuilding, which is building a body. Bodybuilding is just called that because that's just what it's called, but it goes off the same premise within your training. You are training to build a body. It's body sculpting. You can call it body toning, but it's all around the same aspect. So with that, because you are a natural bodybuilder, I think that is the best place to actually start this, because you, more than anyone else, would understand with the amount of comps that you've done over the years, just how hard it is to grow muscle. And when you compare your leanest state or your stage photos, that's like the ultimate comparison of how much muscle you built, because you can't really tell that while you're still carrying the body fat. But at the same time, you could cut off the body fat to think that you built a lot of muscle to only look the same, or worse, because of what you did in that interim period. But you've consistently added that mass and you still found it extremely hard to build, despite, I will tell you guys, Steve is someone who weighs everything to the absolute gram. He would dismiss the pizzas with Charlotte when she wants to go get the pizzas as well. But there is still that pizza night that he allows for date night. He still allows in the date night, but it's not every single night. Like, I'm going to let you introduce yourself with that topic in mind.
For sure. Yeah, it's bodybuilding is interesting because people think they don't want to be called or classify themselves as a bodybuilder. Even like men I work with, obviously you said you work with mostly females and that's mostly who we're speaking to, but guys I work with, they'll be like, oh, I'm not a bodybuilder because I don't compete. And I'm like, no, I mean, you do everything a bodybuilder does, but don't step on stage. I'm like, that's not how I would like differentiate them. And the majority of the population can learn a ton from bodybuilders because they are the masters of gaining muscle and staying lean, basically, which is what everyone really wants for their body. And it's, as you said, like all those other words to describe, it's the same thing as bodybuilding. It's just, okay, we're trying to add muscle without excessive amounts of fat and then kind of show that muscle off, and maybe just not take it to the extreme of competitive bodybuilding, which is what I love and do. But I totally understand that it's not for everyone. But the kind of my off season, as it were, I like to call it the improvement season, because you're not ever really off, like you just mentioned. That's what everyone else basically does, but they just might not take it to the level of seriousness and the extremeness as a bodybuilder. But that just means they might not train quite as much, but they might not kind of I guess worry about staying as lean at various times. It's just they invest a little bit less into the process, whereas a competitive bodybuilder maybe goes into those diminishing returns or very large diminishing returns for every little ounce of progress. Whereas it comes back to like kind of the law of Pareto, where you get 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts. So you just don't need to put in as much. You just focus on the bigger principles and rocks. But yeah, I guess as a small introduction, as you said, I've now been in the industry kind of online coaching since 2015 full time. So yeah, coming to a decade of work there, which is pretty damn cool. I host the Revive Stronger podcast. I get to talk to experts on a weekly basis within the field of kind of bodybuilding and exercise science and training, nutrition, all that good stuff, sleep, all the kind of aspects that influence your physique progress. I coach mostly actually coaches who are in the field who love this thing. And of course, competitive bodybuilders as well, people doing photo shoots, that sort of thing. I myself have been competing since 2014. So I've also been competing for a decade and managed to climb the ranks within natural bodybuilding and earn my WNBF pro card last year. For those that don't know, the WNBF is arguably, I think it's still an argument, you can't say for sure, but the most competitive and kind of the best natural bodybuilding kind of federation there is. So I'm very proud to have earned that. I never thought I would for myself. And yeah, I think that's a good enough introduction to myself. So thank you, Ruby, for having me on.
Part where you mentioned the pro card at the end, that is the thing. Like, he is someone who's been working at this for more than a decade. And within that, muscle, he isn't this huge, jacked up, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, bulky specimen of a human. He is not, that's the thing. He's natural. He isn't on the gear. And a lot of us are looking at these people that make it seem like it's this daunting, scary thing. We don't want to build that much muscle. We just want to tone. But how hard and how long has it taken you to gain even the slightest bit of muscle despite doing everything correctly, despite training really hard? But that's kind of alluding to where we see the typical population, the typical gen pop, where they keep trying to reveal muscle they haven't built. Number one, they underestimate what it takes, how much muscle they need, how freaking hard it is to build. But when you see them training in the gym, they say they're training really hard and heavy, but are those reps actually effective? Are they actually sending the stimulus you need for the muscle to grow? But it's hard, it's heavy, I'm pushing myself. What does it actually take? But also there is noise in the data, like rest periods, like inability to recover, whatever else that could come into the mix that holds you back from sending the stimulus, even though it's training hard. Talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's actually funny. I glossed over the fact that when people hear bodybuilding, they often think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, or if they think of Jay Cutler, they think of Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman, they think of the biggest, Derek Lunsford, like the biggest bodybuilders now. And that's fair enough. Like that is like, I don't know, that's a different league, basically. It is the one that gets the most attention. It is the freakier element of bodybuilding. And I think I totally get it. I also find that fascinating and really interesting. And natural bodybuilding, I think Broderick Chavez put it as like the enhanced side is like your Formula One racing, whereas the natural side is like just your Ford Fiesta on a racetrack. You're kind of comparing apples and oranges. It is that extreme. So for naturals, there's guys out there who are with elite genetics, have been doing it for decades, and they have physiques where you're like, you would think they're enhanced. They are big dudes. But for me, as you mentioned, I'm not big and freaky. If you see me here, like sat in my room with my jacket on, like, does this guy even lift? Like, it just looks like a normal guy. And I mean, that's what I look like in clothes. I just fit clothes nicely. And it isn't until like I go into the gym, have a pump, and like I'm in a stringer, people are like, oh, dude, like you look like you're enhanced actually. That's the look I want. It's like, yeah, this took me, I've been training since I was like 15 years old, and now I'm 35. And so it's taken a long time to get here. And like you said, muscle growth does not just, you don't suddenly just wake up as the Hulk the next day, even with assistance and PEDs. Like it's just not going to happen. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort and hard work.
Even with PEDs, blah, 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 it's not something that you can just grow. That part, a lot of women feel like they get bulky fast. They just build muscle fast. But I gain really easy, especially in their legs. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that and why the legs are so common of a culprit for women saying that they just grow too fast. But in the same breath, they're the things that they struggle to lean out the most.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I never like to discount people's personal experiences. It might be that they are one of those genetic elites where they do just grow muscle really quickly. There are people like that. But for the most part, it is unlikely to be that they're growing like acute heaps of muscle tissue. It's more so maybe they get like, I don't know, they do a leg press and they've got a bit of a pump within the quads. It's like, oh, like my legs have grown. It's like, no, you've just got cells. Like, no, the muscles there are swollen because there's loads of blood flow and metabolites, and you're getting that sensation. and there's some inflammation there, and maybe like your trousers feel a bit tighter, but it's not like you've grown loads of muscle. And then it's also that nutritional component. Are they actually in a calorie surplus and they're gaining weight, and now it's like body fat that they're potentially putting on? For females especially, leg development comes on a bit quicker than upper body development. I think that is one of the just differences in physiology between men and women.
I was going to ask you about the physiology there. Do you know anything much more about the glycogen storage capacity? Like, for example, when people have been dieting their whole lives and they finally start fueling themselves enough, not in a surplus, but actually fueling their performance, training really hard, now they're able to store more glycogen, and then they're just being a permanent state of a more hydrated muscle as well. Do you know any more about that?
I couldn't put any precise numbers to it, but it's absolutely a thing. Anyone who has like gone on holiday and not trained, especially as someone who's well trained, and they just flatten out because you're not giving your muscles the reason to have to store glycogen. And quite often on holiday, your diet's like higher fats versus higher carbohydrates. You might even, for some people that if they're very active, like they go on a hike, say you go for a hiking trip for 1 to 2 weeks, you don't train and you're just kind of active and you're burning through loads of glycogen, but maybe even you're in a small deficit, you'll come back and you'll be like, oh my gosh, like where's my muscle gone? And this is like where peaking comes from for bodybuilders, because to get to stage levels of condition where you have like literal lines in your butt, like a walnut, you have to be in a calorie deficit for an extended period of time and get very flat. So during a peak week process, one of the biggest elements that we do is try and refill glycogen stores. And you can consume a lot of carbohydrates to try and get your glycogen stores back up. For some individuals, it can be 10 times their body weight in kilograms, which is like close to 1,000 grams of carbohydrates for some people who are big, but anywhere between like 500, 1,000 grams over a course of days or even within a day. So there's a lot of stored glycogen potential. And then with that is water. So it's part of peak week would be not restricting water, but actually having plenty there so that you can store, because every gram of glycogen storage comes with 2 to 3 grams of water. Yeah, it could be that if someone has been dieting and then it's like, oh, I'm going to fuel for the gym, I'm going to start training my legs hard. It's like they've given so many reasons for their legs to initially seem like they've grown loads of muscle. It's just like, well, it's kind of like you're just showing the potential that was there. So yeah, that's definitely a thing.
I love that. You're showing the potential that's there. And I think this is also feeding into the same carbs is something that you should protect even in a diet. I know, for example, when I do a diet, I take my fats as low as I can possibly take them, because those carbs not only impact how I feel in my day-to-day, I always say keeping your carbs high boosts your metabolism, from the simple fact that you're going to have more energy through the day. That's your metabolism. You're going to be moving more. You're going to be recovering better. That's your metabolism, but you're also going to be protecting muscle. You're going to be protecting your performance. If you're not protecting performance and you're not protecting your energy, then you aren't in a fat loss phase. You're in let's get the scale down as fast as possible phase, not protecting muscle, not losing fat, just whatever tissue it is that you lose, because down the road, you don't even know what's going to happen when your performance is just doing all weird shit.
Yeah, for sure. It's that kind of ketogenic diet that allures you in, because you get this honeymoon period where you're a good satiety because you're eating high protein, high fat, which can be very satiating. And you see this whoosh of just, hey, you drop all this glycogen, all this water weight. So you get huge buy-in within a couple of weeks where you're losing like 1 kilo, 2 kilos. And then it's suddenly you would just hit a plateau. And like you said, you're more than likely going to find that your training performance isn't as good in the gym. You're not going to feel as energized day to day, because carbohydrates are that energy source, and they are going to, and the most important thing for kind of keeping muscle tissue is performance in the gym, or growing muscle tissue even. And people do discount, and I think probably especially females, the importance of having a good amount of a baseline of muscle, because muscle is more metabolically active than fat. And so if you can keep that around, you're going to burn more calories just at rest. And even through day-to-day activities, like you're going to use more muscle, and so you're going to burn more calories in those activities probably too. And suddenly you've just got this like bigger energy, this bigger motor that's demanding more food, and now you get to eat more. Or so you basically get to eat more, which everyone loves, right? Especially in a fat loss phase.
That's the thing, like innately people want to be able to eat more, especially women, but at the same time, it's like this huge fear of eating more, that even though it's something they intrinsically know they want, that hesitation, I think this can kind of bring in your fear of gaining and what that held you back from. And then eventually I'll tie into because you mentioned training is the light match, we want to go into what exactly effective training is versus when people just say they train hard and the different factors that can mask that. But I think that fear of gaining is going to be a huge part to lead into this.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of training hard, I'm glad you mentioned that because it was funny, your examples there. It's totally true. There's training hard for just training hard, and then there's training hard specifically for muscle growth. Like training hard is, you can do that in so many different ways. You can squat on a Boza ball, and that's really hard. Like it's hard to balance and like it's challenging, but you're challenging your balance. You're not challenging the muscles in a way that's overloading specifically for muscle growth. Similarly, like you said with rest times, you can do circuit training and your heart rate can be really high. So it's hard because you can barely recover between lifts, but the muscles aren't getting anywhere near to their capacity. They're not near failure. It's your cardiovascular system. So hard in terms of the specifics for hypertrophy is you need to take your muscles proximal to failure. So like it's not balance, it's not your cardio system, it's not nothing else. It is literally you are doing a leg press, and that the quad is like you're getting slow repetitions to the point where you're barely able to get it, and then you're maybe racking it at that point. That's like specific hard work for the quads, and it's going to demand a stress response where the quads are going to need to adapt to then grow, assuming you're doing enough of it. I always think about hard training for hypertrophy as if it's thresholds. We need to meet some certain thresholds to demand a stress response for the muscles to be overloaded to grow. So you have a threshold of proximity to failure. Basically, you need to get to those slow repetitions. You're trying as hard as you can, but despite that, your reps slow down. So that's like a 3-4 reps in the tank, as it were. At least meeting that. Probably you want to be more often pushing towards like 2, maybe even just 1, 0, maybe sometimes even failing. So you know where you know how to actually push hard. And then you want to do enough. So you need to do enough set volume to be able to do enough hard to get that kind of total stress response. So for a lot of people, that could be anywhere from like 5 to 6 sets per week up towards like 10 to 15, depending on the person, to meet that minimum threshold to be like, okay, I'm training hard enough and doing enough of hard things for my body to be like, hey, yeah, you need to start growing that muscle. So yeah, that's important for people to understand what hard means specifically for muscle growth.
But there's 2 things that I can easily throw at you that could make it seem like it's proper hard training, but it's not. Number 1 is doing way too much volume and way too much training. And in that, they could be taking things to what they see as failure and what they also see as reps slowing down. Or they could do, as we were talking about before, they could go into it not well carbed or not well fed, or even fasted. And they could be taking things to failure, but it's not really progressing over time. It's not sending the right stimulus. It's not sending the best of what they could send because they are in such a low fueled, because you can still eat a lot of food in general, but it's not well fueled. Or you can just be underfueled and under eaten in general, and that impacts muscle growth potential, because you're not fueling your performance for those effective stimulus reps to do anything. And then when you're doing too much, it could feel like it's a lot, but then are you actually recovering? And how do you know you're recovering? And how do you know you're actually building muscle?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's where logbooking becomes absolutely essential. So you know you need a baseline of good performance where you are doing less. So you're not doing heaps of volume. So you you're coming fresh into training, you're just starting a program, start towards the lower end of things. You have a baseline performance. And now you know, okay, so I've met these overload thresholds, and that's the load I need to do for the reps. And now the principle a lot of people and listeners will know is progressive overload. So I need to at least meet what I was doing before, if not try and beat that in future. And if you're regressing, as you mentioned, you'll see it. The most obvious sign that you're under recovering is that the objective performance is going down. That's kind of like the exercise science description of under recovered is if you can't do the same load for the same reps or more. If you're doing less than that, you're under recovered. And so, as you said, if you're not fueling for the gym, if you're doing excessive amounts of volume, you'll be under recovered, and that will show in your logbook where your load and reps are not where they should be. You've underperformed, and yeah, you need to do something to manage that fatigue or fuel better next time or get better sleep, whatever it might be.
That part there, I think, is also really important, the reality of progress. And I did do a solo episode on this, but I feel like having you go into more depth about it will be so beneficial, because it's not just the reality of progress over time, it's within a training block in itself. And as soon as it stops getting exciting in terms of I'm improving a lot, this, that, and the other, I can show this off, then people get bored and then they change the training program, and then they do that consistently. And over time, there is no, yeah, you're progressing, but that doesn't mean you're building muscle. You're just progressing every single time you refresh. It's like you're just refreshing programs. You're not building upon programs. You're not building upon muscle. It's just a new exercise. So what do you expect? That's neural adaptations. So I think that within the program itself, but then again, over time and what to expect, because like I'm doing the same weight on so many of my exercises still a month later. And then on my big compounds where it's like over double my body weight, that in itself, it's like, well, I'm not going to just add another 2.5 kilos to a huge 120 kilo RDL as an example.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts that immediately come to mind with this. So as an example to your kind of the progress, I can remember, and I got frustrated at myself thinking about this even, where I would do a mesocycle. So this was generally like 4 or 5 weeks, and then I deload and refresh. And each refresh, I would rotate exercises, thinking that there was this need to vary things and have novelty within the program. Not so much muscle confusion. People hear that and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's a myth, right? Yeah. But novelty, sometimes people use novelty or variation as excuses to go down this muscle confusion sort of path. And I would basically start off a mesocycle, kind of training hard, but not that hard, leave loads in reserve basically. And then I'd be able to progress it every week because I wasn't really training that hard at the start. And then once it started getting hard and like, okay, now you're actually overloading for growth, I deload and switch in a new exercise just as it was getting hard. So I think that's to your point of which just as things get hard, people switch it out because things slow down. But it's like, no, this is actually the growth zone. And this has been shown within research where they have people do exercises where they don't really grow all that much in the initial phases because they're just getting that skill set. They're just learning an exercise and they can't truly overload the muscles. It's kind of similar to, I remember trying to learn how to ride a bike. I'm not that old that I can't remember that. And you can't get anywhere when you're first learning. Like you're just like trying to get to grips with it. You're falling off. Like you're not actually getting further to your end goal and destination. And once you've learned it, now you can actually travel to where you want to go. It's the same way with muscle growth. Like if you're just switching, it's like, right, I'm going to try and learn how to ride a bike. Oh, I just learned and now I'm going to get off and I'm going to try and learn, I don't know, a scooter. And then you get off and you're not really progressing forward. Whereas if you stick with something, you're going to be able to actually move forward with it and progress it and overload it. So that's an important thing to remember. And then the other thing you mentioned there was just like realistic rates of progression. And like I said, at the start, when you're learning an exercise, like you get quite quick neural adaptations. So you do see that. And then it's going to slow down quite a lot. And the same can be said for just your level of advancement as a baseline trainee. So when you first go into the gym, everything's new and you're learning everything. But once you are an intermediate, you've been training a good like 3 to 4 to 5 years consistently. Now things are just baseline going to be slower. And then again, once you double that, you've been training for like 7, 8, 9, 10 years, things are going to be even slower. And the analogy I always use with that is like when you go to school, you can learn a ton about a bunch of different subjects, maths, English, science. You can learn all the basics really easily because everything's new and it's not that kind of complex. But if you want to get really educated on the field of science, you then take it to like GCSE. Now you pick, oh, I'm going to do biology. I'm not going to do chemistry. But then if you go to like A levels and then you go into like learning it as a degree, you go into a PhD, suddenly it gets like ultra hyper specific on one really nuanced thing because you have to be that specific on that thing to be able to continue to learn. You can't learn at the same rate on the abundance of information. And it's the same within the gym. That kind of progress really slows down past the initial stages. And that doesn't mean that you're not growing if you just can't imagine to see linear progress every week. If we could add like whatever it is, a kilo to our bench press every week, we'd suddenly all be benching hundreds of kilos and it's just not realistic. We'd all be the strongest kind of person in the world. It slows down because the body just resists those adaptations. It doesn't want to be the hugest, most muscular, strong individual. It just wants to deal with what we're working with. So that's something to be prepared for. And it's, as you said, when you're using the same weight, same reps, the key thing to remember is you're still meeting those overload thresholds. You're still giving the signal for growth. When you can add a rep or you can add load, it's just a sign that you've grown. So you don't need to add a rep or to have added load to have grown. It's just it's like a feedback loop to tell you, oh, now you have grown. You've just provided that stimulus for long enough. I've actually got a post coming out on this in terms of like training plateaus. It's like it's not a problem if you're using the same reps and same load for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. If you want faster progress, then maybe you can work on getting that adaptation to occur faster, and that might be, or maybe I put myself into a surplus. I dial in my sleep a little bit more. If I'm recovering from this quite comfortably, maybe I can do a bit more volume, and maybe that can heighten my adaptation speed. Or it might just be you just need to give it more time, and that adaptation will kick in eventually. Or it might be that, like you said before, you've got an amount of accumulated fatigue that's like hiding your performance, and maybe you need to pull back a little bit to allow that to kind of come through. Yeah, I think it's funny. People get into the gym and they think they know everything because they just see rapid progress. And then they're like, oh no, like I can no longer see this progress. And then they just assume anyone who's continuing to progress is on gear, or I don't know, they found some sort of secret. It's like, no, it's just a time thing. You got to be patient. The basics are the basics for a reason, and they apply to someone advanced just like they apply to that newbie. So yeah, hopefully I answered your question in some sort of way.
In many ways, and especially when you just said then I'm going to work my way backwards, but the basics is still the basics. And I think social media is really ruining it for people. And I think this is where you had it lucky and I had it lucky, because back in 2015 it wasn't loaded with all of this bullshit. Like, if you remember back then, it was just the same people. It was still a new thing, and a lot of it was just pure bodybuilding stuff. It wasn't people coming into it because now they realize the benefits of muscle, the benefits of eating more protein, the benefits of all this stuff. It's like the Gen Pop has completely just flooded the bodybuilding space, and now it's filled with so much more shit, because with the Gen Pop, what comes with it? The advertising, the marketing, the gimmicks, the whatever makes people money. And that is what's holding a lot of people back, because like that's what our monkey brains are for. And I reckon ever since lockdowns, I don't know whether you noticed as well, because we've been in this the same amount of time. Before lockdowns, people were, number one, a lot more committed. Number two, they weren't burnt so many times. And number three, they had more time to give it. But then during lockdowns, people inundated themselves with more work. And then on the other back end, they never reduced that work. They just added their normal load of work onto the extra load of work that they already had. That it's just making it really difficult for them to just stay focused on the one thing. They just want to get it over and done with, which then goes back to bodybuilding. Like, yeah, it's not getting big and bro. And you just said that. The body doesn't want muscle. It's going to get rid of it the second that you stop stimulating it and giving it a reason to grow. So you're not going to get bulky. And if you think that you've got too bulky, stop training that body part and you'll lose the muscle. It's like, you don't have to worry about that as that I'm going to like, oh no, this is never going to get undone sort of thing. And I think that's the part that really needs to get like hammered in, so people stop sabotaging their own progress. Like going back to what you did with not actually feeding the muscle enough, because you can be sending all of the right stimulus for growth. Because I know I got to a point where I was training my ass off. I was pushing my training, but I wasn't eating enough for that growth. So yeah, even though it was training, like I was training hard, what do I expect to happen if there's not enough fuel coming in? And especially when you've been training for a longer period of time, you actually do need that extra bit of fuel to see the growth that you want. And especially if you're as impatient as the normal human is. Like this whole, let's lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Well, you're going to get so bored of that you're going to try to cut every single summer. And if you're trying to cut every single summer while trying to do both at the same time in between, what are you wanting to build?
Yeah. It's your reflection on kind of it being tougher now getting into things versus when we did is interesting, because there's so much positive things in regards to, like, I don't know, you look at Jeff Nippard and he's got over 1 million subscribers over on YouTube. You look at Mike Israetel with Renaissance Periodization, like, I don't know, they're in the millions as well. There's this massive abundance of information out there. There's so many podcasts, like evidence-based, like doctors, whatever, having all this information, and it's absolutely like amazing, but also And like, if I came into it now, there's people who could come into it now who know like their average IQ for lifting is like huge. Like they know the textbooks, they know what to do, but in the gym they're just lost. They don't know how to apply it in a gym setting. Whereas when we got into things, at least this was what it was like for me. I just went into the gym and I was just like, just saw people around me kind of lifting, and I just kind of navigated and found my own way. And then once I found I wasn't quite seeing the progress I wanted to, then I started to try and research and find kind of good information. And then that kind of put me in the right direction. Whereas now, yeah, there could be people who, they know so much, but they are then trying to apply it in the gym in like I don't know, a weird, convoluted way. And it's taken them to a level, they're trying to apply things that they don't even need to worry about thinking about, like fatigue, for example. Like that's become the bogeyman a lot in like the space.
Whereas, fibers.
Yeah, exactly. Like so many nuanced, like really specific things that just at that point, you just need to grow everything. You need to train hard, and you almost can't train yourself so hard that you're going to worry about fatigue, because the body is just like, you're not that strong. You just can't. So yeah, I do think that it's tough for people coming in, especially because there's an abundance of information, lots of good information, but there's also lots of rubbish information and confusing information out there too. So it's a challenging time for people to be in. And also when we started like online coaching, there was only a handful of people really doing it. At least that was my impression. Whereas now anyone who's stepped on stage, anyone who's lost 10 kilos is suddenly like, oh yeah, I could be an online coach. And now they're trying to coach people. So there's just a huge swath of just supply of online coaches, and therefore then people trying to put out information, some again good, some of it confusing. People are getting burnt by rubbish training programs. And I think, yeah, it's funny, the average lifting IQ is higher, but I think the average person in the gym is also more confused than ever and feeling more lost than ever too.
Yeah, I agree with that whole feeling more lost than ever, because when you know so well that you have this issue and you know what you need to do to solve it, it's like, I know what I need to do, but how do I apply it and where do I fit into this? And I can see that this is here and this is here. But when you phrased it that way, I just thought of confirmation bias. Like whatever you believe fundamentally to be true, like people who believe saturated fats are so good for you, they're going to start to flock towards the people that are promoting saturated fats. And everything that anyone else says, like, they're hard people that are going so hard on seed oils, et cetera, but they believe it's so fundamentally to be true that they're not even going to challenge the other stuff. So then people who come into the bodybuilding space, or the let's build muscle, lose fat, look toned and sculpted and like a lean, long muscles person, is going to flock towards what looks right. And then you see people doing Pilates. Oh, lifting weights made me bulky and masculine. Now Pilates is making me lean and sculpted. Well, no fucking shit, because you just lifted like you're going to get bulky for the last freaking, 5 years, and now you're eating sensibly, you're now relaxed, you're not trying to force yourself with, or like, I think the reason I went into that in particular is the fatigue aspect, where people aren't there's no such thing as overtraining per se in the general population, and there's no such thing as needing so much of this fatigue recoverability. It's more so you are undertrained and overworked, you're not training effectively. And then there's the sleep. Let's look at all these other aspects, because most people are also inconsistent in their training, especially the Gen Pop. So in a bigger picture, you're not overtrained. You just are not doing things effectively. But yeah, I would love your take on that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, there's confirmation bias. It's unfortunate, again, with social media. That's where a lot of people get their information, and the algorithm will just feed you what you want to see. Now that's how it works. Like, you're interested in like people shouting against seed oils, you're just gonna like those posts, and then you're gonna get more people who hate against seed oils. It's the way it goes. And it comes back to, I know, a book that I read, like I think it's titled something along the lines of what you see is all there is. So it's like whatever you digest online is what you think. Like if all you digest online is people saying that the world is flat, suddenly you're going to think the world is flat, even though there's like, a huge amount of abundance information of people being like, no, that's complete bogus. That doesn't make any sense. So it's easy to get, especially on social media in this day and age, like caught into dogma and get lost in that too. And yeah, you see, and in the fitness industry, it's kind of, you see these topics circle around, like, again, like low fat, or fats are bad, carbs are bad. Like, there's always this enemy within the industry that just circles around low volume, high volume, fatigue, like stimulus. And it takes a while to see through the matrix and find educators in the space that don't have like an agenda, don't have a supplement to sell you, don't have like a specific product to sell you, and people who you see as updating themselves, staying open-minded, taking in the research and not using kind of cherry-picked research to provide their points, and speak in a way that's very pragmatic and not kind of black and white. I think if you can come across individuals like that, they're the ones to kind of hold on to, and to like always stay skeptical of everyone you follow. But if you find someone that's, again, open-minded, doesn't speak in black and white, seems to take in like the kind of complete evidence, it doesn't say anything too good to be true type of thing, doesn't have a supplement to sell you, then you can feel a bit more confident in that person. And if you can question them on posts and they respond to your questions and they don't just like block you or like whatever it is, and for myself in my social media diet, I follow people that I disagree with. It's not all people that I just like fundamentally agree with everything they say, because I want to challenge myself and stay kind of like out of that dogma if I can. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive. And then also recognizing social media is not education. Like, there are textbooks out there, there are courses you can do that are going to be better. Even long format podcasts, they're very good. Like, this is amazing. It's a huge step above a social media post or reel. But even past that, there are like courses and things you can do that you can get even further and better information.
Yeah, I've always loved podcasts and discussions as my greatest source of, let's look at people's general discussions on this and opinions on this and see if it can actually help me think deeper about a topic. And that's one thing that a general person can't really get out of a podcast if they don't already have prior knowledge based off textbooks and knowledge. For me, I thrive off being able to think about my own thinking and make myself see things in different ways. And I do that all the time when I read different posts. I don't like it's more so I like reading the comment section of posts. So that's probably why I don't like social media, because I can't just read a post. I need to go into the comments. But next minute, it's like an hour later and I'm on one post. It's like, this is why I don't do social media half the time, because I like going into that in depth. I want to challenge my thinking, go deeper into something, but that goes back to the whole people don't have time for this shit. So they take the first thing, they give it a whirl, they don't realize how long this stuff actually takes. And then when it's not working, they go to something else. But it's not going to work in your time frame. It takes time, and you can't force feed muscle growth. You can't force train it on. And the look that you are hoping to see through fat loss is actually through building muscle. And yeah, losing fat as well. But if you aren't building up a huge amount of strength and training potential, your fat loss phases are going to be so much harder and so much more ineffective, because it's harder for you to hold on to muscle, because the more mature it is, the stronger that you are and the further that you've been improving upon your training. I've always seen, like, just not hypothetically, I've always seen in practice that to be something that allows people to get leaner better, to lose fat faster, because they now have this bigger energy demand as well. So they're still able to move through the day. And that's probably why we find it easier as well, because we've done the building and we've seen the importance in that, which is why you're so big. You even have a podcast called The Improvement Season, but that's why you are so big on this improvement season. And that's why you've made it such a big deal, because no one does. It is boring. It doesn't have a huge dangling carrot. So I think that's something that I do want to talk about as well.
Yeah, I think it's a thread through our discussion here, is that people struggle to grow muscle, I think, in the Gen Pop. And because I think they have a fundamental bit of a confusion or misunderstanding with it. You probably heard people say like, oh, bulking doesn't work for me. Like, I get fat and then I cut down and I haven't gained any muscle. I think it's because maybe some people approach bulking in the wrong way. Well, that is probably exactly what it is, where they think of bulking like cutting, in that when you cut every week, you can see new lines, details, you see scale weight change. And so they approach bulking the same way, over the same like time scale, basically, where you can see week to week progress, but you do not see week to week progress in a gaining phase. You need to extend your timeline to monthly, because muscle gain is so much slower. The body is so much less happy. People are like, oh, bulking's easy. It's like bulking is easy. Gaining weight is easy. gaining muscle is not easy. The body's happy to put on body fat, but it's not happy to gain new muscle tissue. So you have to extend the timeline, basically a 4-to-1 ratio. So if you're looking every week during fat loss, look every month during muscle gain. Take it real slow. Like your rate of progress should probably be a fourth as well. So if you're losing a pound a week, probably like a pound a month is more so what you want to be targeting. And
that's the scale going up. That is
Yes.
the scale going up. Like, people are scared of that shit.
Yeah, and I did it so much. Spoke about my kind of initial, like when I initially bulked, I did it the wrong way. I did get over fat, and then I kind of got burnt by bulking because I was like, oh man, like I just got fat. I never want to bulk again. And then I tried really lean gaining very slowly, and I just kept, every time I'd gain a bit of like a pound, I'd reduce my calories, and then suddenly my training wasn't as good, and I just kind of like was going back and forth and doing a yo-yo diet. It was a glorified yo-yo diet, and I really didn't see the growth that I wanted. And then I found this middle ground where it's like, all right, you can't force feed muscle growth, as you said, Sue. I can't like bulk at the rate of gaining a pound a week. I need to slow that right down. But I do need to be happy and settled with, hey, it's not going to be linear. There's going to be fluctuations. Look at weekly averages, look at bi-weekly averages, look at monthly averages, like stretch that out and just fuel training. Because training, as I said before, is the match that lights the fire for muscle gain. You have to be training productively and enjoying that process and seeing numbers go up. And then the fuel, your nutrition is just permissive of what you're doing in the gym. So then suddenly you can do a 6-month gaining phase where maybe you've only gained 4-6 pounds. So you've not gained like crazy amount of weight, but you'll look significantly bigger because now you've actually gained good muscle tissue. And then when you diet down maybe for a month, now you've stripped away, maybe it's 3 pounds, and now you're 3 pounds lighter. That's all body fat, and you've gained 3 pounds of true muscle tissue. And when you think about 3 pounds of like just like lean beef within the supermarket, that's a lot of muscle spread across your physique. Of course, it starts not looking as much, but if you're gaining like within your intermediate newbie years, like you can gain close to like 5-10 pounds across those years, you're going to be looking significantly different. But if you keep trying to gain too quickly and then you cut back, you're never really putting down the groundwork for good productive training and building that momentum to grow a lot of muscle. So I always encourage people to like, don't get like, don't try and force feed muscle growth. Let your gaining phases at least a 4-to-1 ratio to your cutting phases, and get comfortable with just enjoying the process of having energy in the gym, trying to beat numbers, and let that be your focus. And that's where some people do really well with powerlifting, because powerlifting really emphasizes gym performance. It really emphasizes beating numbers, progressive overload. And so bodybuilders in the past, especially on the like more enhanced side, they don't have to worry about that aspect as much because the PEDs help a lot, and they can like focus on chasing a pump. As a natural, you can't do that. You've got to make sure your numbers are going up. You're getting stronger over time in the hypertrophy rep range, which really is just like 5+ reps, right? Not in the like singles and triples. So yeah, that would be my chat behind like how to allow people to really gain lots of muscle, is being patient, focus on fueling the gym, and not making too many modifications, and not focusing on the time scale like you would when you're dieting.
I'm going to try to pump this one out in the remaining time that we have, but what you just said just sparked something extra at the end. But because I wanted to quickly just mention back to what you said before, I think it ties into this before I move on to it. And that's where you can't just force progressive overload either. Progressive overload, as in your numbers going up, is a byproduct of you showing up consistently, training to do the absolute best you can with effective reps, being well fueled and having all the things checked off your list, and training on an effective program. As a byproduct, you're going to have progressive overload. It may not be week to week. It may not be every second week, but it's going to be over time. And when you can still that rep, you might not get it every single week, but the accumulation over time is on a trajectory up. Yeah, you will see a lot of that at start, but in the end, it's going to be, well, if you steal an extra rep on the second week, that's progressive overload because you're lifting with a whole heap of lifting history, which makes you not a novice, obviously. And then when we were talking about this conversation here, and it's gaining and building and then going into a fat loss phase after like 12 months or whatever else it is, not only are you going to lose fat faster for the simple fact that now you've built the muscle, you've built the training performance, you're going to burn a lot more calories in the gym, even though that's not the thing that you focus on in the gym, but you're going to get a lot more out of less. So the same 4 sessions over the 4 hours of the week, you're going to be burning a shit ton more, lifting a shit ton more volume, maintaining a shit ton more muscle mass, while probably being on higher calories as well. There's a bonus. But if you're someone that's been in the yo-yo dieting space for ages, trying to lose fat for ages, never seeing what you want, you just gave yourself a whole year without even thinking about dieting. Now you can actually weigh your food to the gram if that's what you're doing for your fat loss phase. You can easily say no to things. You can easily say, I'm not doing XYZ for this amount of time, because you haven't been trying to do that without any benefit for the last 13 years of your life, 23 years of your life. So there's a benefit there as well. It's like, this is why I am so big on not going straight into fat loss, because chances are anyone who comes to us wants to just lose fat and get leaner off the bat. So why isn't it working? Because you've been focusing on that this whole time. So let's get you away from focusing on that. Work on the things that can make it easier for you, which is like a side tangent. But you said stronger, and that's something that I love talking about in terms of the stronger part. Strength is lean. Stronger is lean. Lean is muscle. Muscle is strong. If you're not getting stronger, you're not building muscle, you're not getting lean either. That's like my saying. But there's also something that you have as a saying, which is do the things you need to do and not the things you want to do. And I think both of those kind of tie in. But then the last topic that I wanted to bring in, if you can remember to touch on both, is the importance of learning good technique first, not trying to like skip over rocks. Because without proper form, without proper technique, number one, you're not going to standardize anything. How do you know you're progressing? But number two, it's hard to keep progressing something to build the muscle you want to build continuously over time if you haven't got your bracing in check, because you're going to end up with injuries, or you're going to just keep hitting ceilings over and over again because you never worked on the form.
There's so much there. The technique, it's definitely people, again, this is one of those things where the lifting IQ is high. So people understand, maybe, I hadn't heard about reps in reserve when I first went into gym. Like it wasn't a concept. Relative intensity, RPEs, I had no idea. I just went into the gym and I was lifted the weight. And I don't know, I probably just like hit involuntary failure, or my technique was so bad I was imbalanced and just fell or something. And so I think some people focus on, I got to train hard in the gym. Like they see a Mike Mensa reel and they're just like, oh, this guy, he was just like training to failure and force reps and all of this. And that's before they've even got their technique down. It's like, well, actually, as a novice, the muscle is so ready to build muscle. You don't even need to worry about being close to failure. You can grow muscle from literally cycling. That's overloading to you. So important to get just basic form and technique down when you get into the gym. That forms the foundation to then be able to progress from. And technique, and you'll know this, Ruby, even when you're decades into lifting, you're always working on your technique, like refining it, little things. We still have egos ourselves, so we try and progress things and we want that extra rep, and maybe it degrades a little bit, so we pull things back. But so long, you want to always be in this range of safe, productive technique. And if you don't start there, yeah, like you said, you're just risking injury, burnout. You might not even be using the muscle that you intend to use for the lift. I know for the longest time, people talk about my arms being big, and it's like, well, all my rowing and pulling was done with my biceps for the longest time. It took me years to realize, I need to like think about intent within muscles and my muscle connection. But again, you're jumping ahead when you're doing that sort of thing. But this is why, if you can, I think it's like a kind of a bit of a cheat code. If you can get a personal trainer one-on-one when you first step into the gym to teach you the basics of lifting, you're going to be miles ahead. Whereas for me, I don't know if it's the same for you, Ruby. I kind of taught myself off videos online and just kind of felt it in the gym and went through things. And that could be fine too. But yeah, the risk of you could do yourself a serious injury. And if you're injured, you can't be training, and therefore you're not growing, you're not seeing the results you want. So technique has to come first. And then to the quote of, I kind of had that quote you mentioned, and then also trying to make kind of your wants your needs. So like make what you need to do what you want to do, because ultimately what you want is muscle growth. So look at what you need to do, and then what you need to do is what you want to do, because what you want to do is muscle growth. So it kind of it all kind of feeds into itself in that regard. Like, I don't know about you, Ruby, but there's some things I don't like training, like calves, abs. I don't particularly love training my arms, but I want to grow muscle in those areas. So I know, actually, I do want to do them, and I need to do them to be able to make them grow. So I ensure that I'm doing that. And I think sometimes it's the same with diet. Some people are like, yeah, I don't want to be in a calorie deficit. I don't want to feel hungry, but I do want to get leaner. So it's like, actually, I do want to feel hungry. And then you can almost have this positive affiliation with hunger where it's like, oh, if I'm hungry and I'm eating right, I probably am in a calorie deficit. And now it's like, oh, I get like this almost positive feedback loop with hunger versus being like, oh, hunger's terrible. I'm afraid of hunger. Or it's like something I don't want to feel. So if you can reframe things, it just helps with the whole process. I do think there is something too within training though, where some people think, I don't know, they see Tom Platz and he's like, squats, you must squat for big legs. It's like, there's very few rules within bodybuilding, and same with nutrition. It's not like you have to eat tilapia to get lean. You can find another lean protein source. You can find another squat pattern, and there might be a bunch of really good ones that are all just as good as one another. And maybe there's one there that's your preference, but fundamentally you've got to eat some lean protein. You've got to do a squat pattern, but it doesn't mean you have to pick the one that's your least favorite. So you can kind of find some things that you don't have to go completely against your preferences. I think long term that'll burn you out because you're not going to adhere. I wouldn't adhere to a diet that was all tilapia. It's not going to happen.
That was the thing back then. I'm pretty sure you were in it too. Fish and asparagus thins the skin.
Yes. Yeah. That's the whole thing, isn't it? Tilapia thins the skin. It's like, oh dear. Like, yeah, sure. Like eating tilapia, it's a lean protein source, and asparagus, it's got fiber and it's got micronutrients. They're not bad diet foods, but thinning the skin, that's a bit of a stretch, right?
And then stronger, because I think that's a great place to end it, especially because Revive Stronger and everything's about stronger. Like, to me, strength isn't just about the weight on the barbell. I think that the person you become through training, it changes you fundamentally. It changes how you show up to life, how you show up as a parent, as a partner, your character traits. I just feel like strength is so much more than just a barbell. And yes, it's going to give you all you want physically and physique wise. And without getting strong, you're not going to get lean. But in the process, if we stop trying to just shrink and stop trying to just chase a scale down and pants down and being scared of, oh my God, I'm going to gain fat or get too bulky, it could bring so much of a world of good to us.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. It's like stronger is strength, is resilience, it is confidence in who you are. And actually, you made a really good point previously that I did want to touch on, was like this constant, you're not always dieting, but you kind of are, because you're yo-yo dieting and you're never in a place of strength. You're never strong. And to diet successfully, you need to be strong. I talk about this often in the context of like a diet for a contest prep. You need to start in a place of strength because you're going through a really tumultuous and challenging journey where you're looking to drop 10, 20% of your body weight potentially to get to stage to an extreme level of body fat. But for any diet, you need to start in a position where your diet fatigue is low. And that means your hunger is not super high at all, it's low, manageable. You've got good energy levels, you're strong, performing well in the gym, your sleep is in a good place, you feel hormonally in a great place too. If you start in a place of strength, you give your body a chance to then go into a calorie deficit, and that doesn't put this huge stressor on you. It's just an additional stress that you can easily deal with. And now you can continue to be strong in the gym, maintain that, or even grow that muscle and see the results you want. But if you start in a place where you're already like half beat up, again, come back to like a race car analogy. If you're half fueled, you've got a burst tire because you've been continuously trying to diet, you're not going to get very far in that fat loss journey. You're going to have to kind of pull back again. And that might lead you to a pit stop emergency, which might be a binge or something like this, which is going to put you in a really poor position. And then the final point on strength, which I think it can be confusing for people because powerlifting and bodybuilding are completely separate sports. And then strength is not the same in both in terms of it applying to your results. I mentioned the hypertrophy rep range, which is basically 5+ repetitions. You can really think of it as, because less than 5, it's not that it can't grow muscle. It's just not the most efficient way to grow muscle. And also strength, like we've mentioned a few times, you do want to see progressive overload, but you can't expect to get stronger every week. It's just in the long run, you want to be seeing those numbers go up. Because fundamentally, if you haven't got stronger on like your main compound lift for a movement over the last like 6 months, you haven't seen a load or rep increase, I can't be confident you're growing muscle. But if you have, I'm fairly confident you have. You could focus on so many things that are related to muscle growth, like soreness or pumps or whatever it might be. But if you haven't got stronger for reps over the long term, I'm sorry, I'm really not confident you've grown muscle. So that needs to be a big focus for you. Long term, gaining performance in those higher repetition ranges is going to be fundamental for you. So yeah, that's my last little ramble on strength and stronger and all that good stuff.
I really love how you tied together stronger and strength and brought that quote back up, because that was the perfect tie-in. And that's the thing, like, you guys are weakening. That's why you aren't confident. You haven't proven that you're capable of doing anything. You haven't pushed into the hard. You have only given into your perceived wants, but never what you actually need to get to where you want to be. And that is what Steve is all about in the bodybuilding space, especially. And that's where you see it on show more. It's just that you want to do those things to not the same extreme, but it's the fundamental same principles. And it's why they are good at what they do, because they give up many of their wants for their needs, but they don't really give them up. If you see it in Steve's words, they end up wanting them because they reframe it, because what they want is progress. And if you keep giving up what actually gives you progress for what gives you immediate gratification or immediate dopamine hits, you're going to continue to feel down on yourself. You're never going to feel confident, because you've never done anything to put you in a place where you can feel confident. So yeah, I loved that. With that, is there anything else that you want to end this with? Plug your Instagram username, and I'll put that down below as well. And anything else that you want to leave my listeners with?
Sure. Yeah, that's really well said. I think that touching on that kind of a short-term want and yeah, like you said, those short-term dopamine hits. And then I always think about, what would Steve tomorrow be happy that Steve today did? And like, I'm like, right, he would be happy if he got a good amount of sleep, he hit his macros, he did his training, all those kind of big things. And always looking to my longer term self. What's the saying? People underestimate how much they can achieve in like the long term, and they overestimate how much they can achieve in the short term. And that's been a big fundamental thing that we've spoken about in this podcast. So yeah, thank you for having me, Ruby. If people want to learn more about Revive Stronger, they can head to website revivestronger.com. That has our coaching, it has the podcast, improvement season as well, and the kind of expert podcasts I have. And I'm most present on, I do some YouTube bits aside the podcast and vlogs now and then, but mostly it's on Instagram. So Revive Stronger over on Instagram as well. People can reach out to me, ask me any questions. And yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a long time in the works, and I'm really grateful you could come on after 20 years of knowing you. Let's just say the first 3 years where I was obsessed with your content. So yeah, I hope you guys get a lot out of this. You can apply some of these principles. And if you have any questions at all, please do reach out to Steve, because he puts out amazing work on building muscle, on what training actually looks like. Yeah, okay, you're not stepping on stage, but the thing is, you will look the way that you want if you do the things that he does as well. So I love you guys, and you will hear me on the next episode.